This program is about unsolved mysteries. Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials have participated in recreating the events. What you are about to see is not a news broadcast.
Recently, we were astonished to discover that according to one medical researcher, 50% of all Americans who lost a loved one say they have later been visited by that loved one from beyond the grave. After her husband John died, Patty Eggleston insisted on several occasions he appeared to her and endowed her with the strength to carry on. In 1984, 18-year-old Paige ROARK left home for an evening out. 6 hours later, she was killed by a drunk driver. Incredibly, Paige's mother and grandmother both claim they were visited by Paige's spirit, hallucination, or a remarkable, unexplained phenomenon. When a nurse named Kathleen Belcher began talking to her mother about blood types, she never dreamed the conversation would spring the lock on a deeply held secret, her mother's post-World War II romance and the true identity of Kathleen's biological father. Join me for these fascinating stories. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery. What happens beyond the grave when life is over? Despite a myriad of religious beliefs, there seems to be one surprising area of consensus. According to a noted medical researcher, 7 out of 10 widows and widowers in the United States report that their spouses have come back to visit them after death. Hallucination? Or does a bond of matrimony transcend the grave? January 28th, 1989.
Keys?
John and Patty Eggleston, along with their 2 young sons, Johnny and Chris, were packing up after a day of skiing. Ahead lay a 70-mile drive to their home in a Seattle suburb. Everything was calm, routine, normal.
Okay, guys, as soon as we get home, I want you right in bed, okay?
Honey, they'll be sound asleep before we ever pull in the driveway.
Then, disaster. The Egglestons' car careened off this bridge and plummeted into the river below, a free fall of more than 80 feet. It was pitch dark. The car rapidly filled with icy water. Patty Eggleston was badly injured. Yet at the moment she might have panicked, Patty was suffused with an inexplicable calm.
I had this feeling come through me and fill every pore, every cell of my being with warmth and love. It was pure love, and it was guidance. And that feeling gave me the knowledge and the strength to do what I needed to do next.
Patty did not at first realize that her husband John had died on impact, but she came to believe that it was John's spirit, even after death, which inspired her, gave her the strength to break free and rescue her boys. Johnny and Christopher were saved by the heroic efforts of their mother and a brave passerby who plunged into the river to help. After a brief stay in the hospital, Patty Eggleston returned home and struggled to be strong. Patty says that when things seemed bleakest, she once again sensed John's spirit. At first it was at night in the bedroom.
I was woken up from a sound sleep with the feeling that John had just been there. I could feel him, I could smell him, I could feel where he was in the bed. The only sensation I didn't have was visual. I did not see him. Every other part of it I felt and experienced. And it was not a dream. It was too real to be a dream.
Eventually, a Seattle physician, Melvin Morse, heard about Patty Eggleston. Dr. Morse has documented hundreds of after-death visits and believes that such visits actually happen, that they are not simply the product of overactive imaginations.
I feel that the fact that these experiences are emotionally dynamic, that they help to heal grief, and that people learn from them are a powerful piece of circumstantial evidence, and I grant that it's circumstantial, but a powerful piece of circumstantial evidence that that experience is at least as real as any other human experience.
For Patty, John's presence became more and more real. Finally, he appeared in bodily form.
I was sitting in my living room and had the lights on, and I was sitting on the couch reading a book. I just kind of glanced up, and John was there. I couldn't touch him, but I could see him. And he started communicating to me, and I say communicating because he was not talking with his lips.
I think Johnny's beginning to feel better.
I think so too.
But it was a conversation. It was a two-way conversation. He was talking to me, I was talking to him.
I don't know if I can do this alone.
I'm here to tell you that you can. There's a reason you survived. Remember to trust, and you'll always know what to do.
Thank you.
Patty says that John's visits continued for nearly a year.
Looking back, I know it was, he didn't come anymore after I had gotten my life together. I was okay. I was truly okay. Things were still rough. I was still hurting, but I had gained enough strength, personal strength, that I could go on without him, and he wasn't there anymore.
Despite Patty Eggleston's obvious sincerity, her experience could be written off as a spouse's grief-induced hallucination. But widows and widowers are not the only ones who report after-death visits. In fact, some studies claim that more than 50% of the population has experienced this phenomenon. Many are afraid to talk about it openly, but the family of 18-year-old Paige ROARK agreed to share their story.
Paige was our baby, and we were just so pleased to have her. She was a fun child. She loved people, even from when she was a little girl. There was a sparkle in her eyes and in her demeanor.
Hi, Mom.
On the afternoon of April 14th, 1984, Paige Colleen ROARK left her house in Fallbrook, California for an outing with friends.
Forget something?
I love you, Mom.
I love you too.
Six hours later, Paige ROARK was dead. She and one of her friends had been killed when a drunk driver smashed into their car.
I have never felt so helpless and hopeless and out of control in my life. It was as though my heart was crushed. You can't see the scars on me because they're inside. It's almost as if I've marked my life from the moment I was told that she was dead.
Cynthia tried to escape her grief by running. It was an activity for which she and Paige had a shared passion. 2 days after the crash, Cynthia left her house at 5 a.m. She ran for more than an hour. Then, as dawn was breaking,
I was coming back towards home, and there were rays of sunshine coming down through the trees, and they were beautiful. I stopped, and I looked up into that light, and I was blinded. It was like it was just white. And then I heard Paige.
I'm okay, Mom. Paige. I can see through that light. I'm with the Lord, and I'm okay.
Paige. I remember a feeling of joy, of peace. I didn't expect it. I didn't try to have it happen. I feel that at the point I was extremely, extremely devastated, and it turned my whole thinking around at that point.
Later, Cynthia would be stunned to find out that her mother, who lived 1,000 miles away in Denver, had had an even more vivid experience.
I love you, Grandma. Paige? Yes. I'm okay.
You are?
Yes. And so is my mom.
She said, I have seen Mom. That's my mother.
And I'm going to take care of her.
I had never told anyone I'd had this. I thought maybe they would think something's wrong with me. But it was very clear to me that I had a vision.
I love you, Grandma.
And she was just so beautiful and perfect, and here we were worried about her, and she was comforting us all the time, comforting me.
I'm okay.
And it was just very real, and I know it happened. I know it in my heart.
Prior to my research, these experiences have been thought to simply be grief-induced hallucinations, passive fantasies of the mind struggling to deal with a terrible loss. The difference is that I'm saying that death-related visions and post-death visitations are real. They're emotionally dynamic. We can learn things from them. That they're actually an interaction between the person who has died and the person who is seeing the vision.
Dr. Barry Beierstein, a physiological psychologist, disagrees.
I believe these people are telling us some very interesting things. I think they're telling us honest recollections of what it seemed like to them. And so I'm interested in their experiences. Now, I don't interpret them probably the way they do. I think these are things that seemed incredibly real to them, but probably didn't exist in reality outside the theater of their own minds.
I don't want to be perceived as a nutcase, but it is important. It's very important for people out there to hear this story if it helps one person. And I'll share this story, and I'll continue to share it for whoever ever needs to hear it.
Is there any way to explain what happened to the families of John Eggleston and Paige ROARK? Can the dead return? Or are after-death visits simply the echo of a strong earthly love? Perhaps we will never know the answers. Perhaps it does not matter. As Albert Einstein once said, the greatest experience we can have is the mysterious. On August 3, 1957, the streets around St. Bonaventure's Monastery in Detroit, Michigan, swelled with some 10,000 mourners. It was one of the largest funerals in the city's history. The inspiration for this massive outpouring was not the death of a powerful cardinal or archbishop, but rather the passing of a humble friar named Father Solanus Casey. For more than 50 years, Father Solanus was a church receptionist and doorman, one of the lowest-ranking priests in the Catholic hierarchy.
Father Solanus was a man who really cared for people. And when people came to him with their worries and fears and pains, he had a way of simply giving them courage to live their life the way it was.
Those whose lives were touched by Father Solanus claim that he sat at the right hand of God. To them, Solanus was a miracle worker. Even today, some still turn to Father Solanus for help when facing a medical crisis.
I do believe my prayer to Father Solanus was answered. It's the first time my prayers have really been answered like that, in such a dramatic way. I'm still in awe of what had happened. I have no other explanation for it.
Joanne, the mammogram was positive.
In the fall of 1990, David Whitkop's wife, Joanne, developed a lump in her breast.
I think we should move quickly. I'd like to set it up as soon as possible.
We were concerned whether this density could be a cancer. We weren't sure what we were dealing with, so medically you have to do a biopsy to see is it benign or malignant.
An appointment with a surgeon was scheduled immediately. When David and Joanne arrived at the hospital, they happened upon a small prayer room. There hung a portrait of Father Solanus Casey.
I was very desperate, and I just prayed to Father Solanus that there would be no more surgery, and I just wanted Joanne not to have this kind of operation at all anymore.
Joanne was wheeled into surgery, and David prepared for a long, anxious wait.
David?
Joanne?
I looked up, and it was Joanne out in the hallway there.
We're going home.
I thought, well, maybe they're taking her down for surgery now.
Hello, Mr. Whitkop.
Hello, Doctor.
We did another series of x-rays on your wife. There's no sign of a mass.
Well, what does that mean?
Well, we took another set of x-rays today to locate the mass for the surgery, but the plates were clean. They didn't reveal any mass. It's over.
David prayed to God that I wouldn't have surgery, and his prayers were answered, even though a half hour before it looked hopeless. And I believe that Solanus and God saw fit to have a healing that day.
Miracles aren't usually things that I'm comfortable with. I don't look for them. I don't expect them. I'm not a miracle worker. I think Joanne believes it was a miracle, and that's good enough for her. In my mind, all I know is it went away and she's better, and I'm thankful for it.
Science has coined the term spontaneous remission to account for sudden recoveries like Joanne Whitkop's. But the faithful see her case as one more example of the marvelous healing powers of Father Solanus Casey. A petition to declare Father Solanus a saint is currently before the Vatican. A stunning tribute to a one-time Wisconsin farm boy named Bernard Casey. Bernard Casey was born in 1870, one of 16 brothers and sisters. At the age of 21, he was moved to dedicate his life to the church.
Das wär's, auf Wiedersehen. Die Klasse ist beendet.
Bernard was accepted at a seminary in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where classes were taught in German and Latin. Bernard, who had not even completed high school, struggled from the start.
Bernhard, verstehst du alles?
Ja, Herr Professor, ich glaube so. Gut, Dankeschön.
Bernard was ultimately asked to withdraw. He later enrolled in the Capuchin seminary in Detroit, where he was given the name Father Solanus. Here, too, he floundered miserably in his studies.
Father Solanus was one of these people who had difficulty remembering the question and answers and theology and so on. And as a result, he never really passed all the tests in his seminary days.
Oremus, fratres carissimi, Deum Patrem omnipotentam.
Once again, Solanus was close to failure. But a few of his superiors recognized his spiritual character and proposed a compromise. Solanus was ordained, but he was barred from hearing confession, preaching a sermon, or teaching the doctrine, all the most cherished duties of a priest.
This was a rather humiliating thing, but I think he accepted it as God's will. And that act of humility then made him more pleasing in God's sight, and so God could work great things through him.
After his ordination in 1904, Father Solanus was sent to New York.
Father, may I have a word with you?
Yes, what is troubling you?
It's my daughter, Father.
Day in and day out, he would greet the parishioners at a church in Yonkers. Soon it was Father Solanus that the people came to see.
Well, I'm afraid.
Oh, you must trust God when you pray. He will hear you.
Yes. Yes.
Father Solanus served in New York for 20 years. By the time he was transferred to St. Bonaventure's in Detroit, many had come to regard Solanus as a divine healer with the power to intercede with God.
Oh, doctor, thank goodness you're here. Where's the boy? Right upstairs.
Perhaps the most extraordinary cure ascribed to Solanus came in the case of 12-year-old Charles Rogers. His sister Helen, 8 years old at the time, remembers vividly.
In 1935, we had the polio epidemic in Detroit. And at that time, my brother came down with a severe headache and stiffness of the neck that went down into his arms and legs. And eventually, he ended up with spasms. He would shake, his body would shake.
Dr. Ronald Athey was one of Detroit's top polio specialists. It didn't take him long to make the diagnosis.
Look at your leg. What can we do? Nothing. But we must get him to the hospital tonight.
Dad wouldn't hear of it right away. He wanted to, you know, see if things would change.
Father Solanus, pardon me for interrupting you, but...
One of Mr. Rogers' employees heard about Charles's plight and went straight to Father Solanus.
Will you please pray for him, Father? I know you have the power to make him better. Will you pray for him, Father? Please.
Don't worry. He will be better tomorrow.
Helen Gleason says her brother underwent a miraculous transformation that very night.
Dad? Mom?
Charles? Charles, is that you? How are you feeling?
All right.
Let's get you back to bed. Come on.
Dr. Athey returned, skeptical that Charles's condition could possibly have improved.
Look at you. Now, give me your hand. Put it up against mine. Now, push my hand back.
He told him to put his hand up against his and push, and do the same with the other hand, and his muscles were moving. The paralysis seemed to leave. His paralyzed muscles seemed to get better.
And walk over to me. Okay?
And Dr. Athey said, Mr. Rogers, you did more than pray.
It's a miracle.
He says, this is indeed a miracle. And medical men do not use that term.
According to Helen, Charles recovered fully within a month. He lived to be 64 years old and was never again troubled by any symptom of polio. Father Solanus Casey retired in 1956 at the age of 85. Until his death the following year, medical problems caused him great suffering, though he complained little.
His skin became very red and scaly. At times it was very burning, and so it was very painful to him. And so at the end of his life, his body was, one of the witnesses had described it, he was as red as a lobster.
In 1966, Father Solanus was proposed as a candidate for sainthood, a formal procedure that often takes decades. In 1987, 30 years after Solanus Casey's death, his body was exhumed to allow church officials to look for signs that might validate canonization.
While his hands and his face were somewhat darkened, the rest of his body was very natural looking. And in fact, the doctor even pressed and it was pliable. But there was no sign of any skin disease of any kind.
Usually, after 30 years, there will be significant decomposition. The stunning condition of Solanus Casey's body, reported by church officials, is said to be characteristic of some candidates for sainthood. Following the ritual examination, the body of Father Solanus was placed in a special sanctuary within St. Bonaventure's. As he did in life, Father Solanus continues to draw pilgrims and inspire believers from around the world.
To me, a lot of times, just myself praying to God, I need help. So, or I might need an interpreter, if I can put it that way. And I think he does help people do that.
She's very sick, Father.
Was Father Solanus a divinely inspired miracle worker who somehow had the ear of God? Or can his cures be explained in more earthly terms? In the end, like the mystery of faith itself, the only answer is in the eye of the beholder. In a moment, when a well-guarded family secret is revealed, a woman embarks on a search for her birth father. In May of 1988, in Plant City, Florida, a hospital nurse named Kathleen Belcher received an urgent call from her mother, Miriam. Kathleen's stepfather was about to have major surgery and needed several pints of blood from both Kathleen and her sister.
No, but Bill's mostly afraid of the blood transfusion, age, you know, things like that. He wants us to donate blood.
Well, what's his blood type?
Kathleen was only too happy to help.
Positive, I could give him some of mine. What are you, aren't you A too?
No, I'm B.
Oh, I guess maybe it was Daddy who was A.
Kathleen never dreamed that this conversation with her mother would prompt an extraordinary revelation.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure. Your father was an O.
And I said, that's impossible because I have A positive and I have to have one of your blood types. Every person has to have either their mother or their father's blood type. And obviously I did not. I had A, and my father, or the man that raised me and I thought was my father, had O, and my mother has B.
My heart went down to my feet, and I thought, you know, all these years, and now this, my secret will be out.
Kathleen, I don't want to talk about this anymore, okay?
Miriam Terry had inadvertently revealed a secret she had kept hidden for nearly 40 years. The true identity of Kathleen's biological father. Miriam was thrown back to the end of World War II when she made the most agonizing decision of her life. Miriam's first husband, Bud Terry, the man Kathleen knew as her father, had flown dozens of bombing missions overseas. After the war, Bud was a changed man.
Before he was in the service, he was a wonderful man. When he came out of the service, he was completely different. Bud could not get jobs anymore because every job he got, he would write bad checks to customers and so on and so forth to pay his bills, his gambling debts, and he was afraid of even being killed because he owed gamblers.
That was sweet. Yeah. You got a 4. Big 4. So anyway,
Bud's gambling was very bad. I don't really have any idea how much he won, how much he lost, but he was always in debt.
Come on, let's go. Here we go. All right. Easy, Bud.
In 1945, Miriam and Bud had a daughter, Kathleen's older sister. In 1948, Bud re-enlisted, hoping military discipline would restore some order to his life. It did not. Bud Terry went AWOL, leaving Miriam and their young daughter behind.
You've been alone a long time, darling. And you really need to think about going out.
Miriam says Bud had been gone for several months when his parents began to suggest Miriam start dating. They even introduced her to Chet Norris, the bartender at their local social club in Covington, Kentucky.
He's been looking at you.
I didn't know much about him at the time. He was very nice looking. He had dark eyes.
I want to introduce you to Miriam, our daughter-in-law.
How do you do?
Hi.
He had a good personality. He was just very nice, and he seemed to be attracted to me. I really didn't even feel like a woman anymore at this time. I felt deserted, like I was unattractive, like I was nothing.
So, what do you like to do? For fun?
I like to dance.
Oh,
I love to dance. Do you dance?
No.
Hmm?
Well, not very well.
Oh.
From his tentative beginnings, Miriam and Chet's friendship quickly blossomed.
Takes care of a few horses.
I wanted a divorce from my husband, and I wanted to marry Chet, and he wanted to marry me.
That's really good news.
You do?
Yeah, I got this job. You know how.
Chet began to think about a future with Miriam. He quit his job at the club and found work as an apprentice tile setter.
Got that job! I'm so proud of you!
They just told me today.
6 months flew by. Then reality came crashing down. Miriam's husband, Bud Terry, was arrested by military authorities.
Proud of you.
They had found him living with another woman in Indianapolis all this while. And I was so upset because of I did not want to go back to him, that I didn't care what I did. And I felt like I just lost my cool, I guess, and I got pregnant.
Miriam was in a quandary, pregnant and in love with a man who wasn't her husband.
Can I tell you something? I'm not sure it's good news.
Sure, of course. What is it?
I'm pregnant. I mean, I think I'm pregnant.
You can't be. I don't think I can have kids.
Chet, I'm telling you, I've been pregnant before, remember? I feel like I am.
Well, if you are, let's go get married. I mean, we've been talking about getting married anyway. So let's do it.
Well, I have to divorce Bud first.
That shouldn't be a problem, should it?
Miriam soon visited Bud in jail.
Hi, Miriam.
She was determined to end their marriage.
How are you?
The only reason I'm here is because I want a divorce.
Miriam, I'm sorry for what I did.
Bud, I've met someone else. I love him, and he loves me, and we want to get married.
No.
Bud, you were the one that left Deborah and me.
Although my husband had been gone all this while, and I didn't feel I loved him anymore, I was worried about losing my daughter.
I'm back, and that's that. We are not getting divorced.
Bud, I'm pregnant. Did you hear what I said? I said that I am pregnant.
He bashed his head against the wall and cried, and then he said, I want you to come back anyway, and nobody will ever have to know. Just come back to me. So at this time, I felt like I was between a rock and a hard place.
What about the baby? What are you gonna do about that? Tell Bud it's his?
Miriam decided that hiding the truth was the only way out of the emotional tangle. She told Chet that she was not pregnant after all.
You're not pregnant? Jeez, Miriam.
Look, I know things are very complicated right now.
It was terribly hard, but I felt I had no choice.
You're making a big
I felt I had to do that. It was awful. It's really awful.
Take Deborah and leave?
Yeah, we take Deborah and leave.
Oh, be reasonable. I can't.
You can't just sit there. You have to do something.
I am doing something. I'm staying here with Deborah and Bud.
He was very upset and very angry and said, this is going to happen again and again and again. You'll see. Your life is just going to be one of misery. Never heard anything about him ever anymore. It was like he dropped off of the face of the earth.
Bud Terry was released from jail after Miriam wrote to a judge begging for clemency. Kathleen was born on February 12, 1950, and true to his word, Bud raised her as his own.
He never gave me any indication that he knew that I was not his. There's no way that I would ever known. In fact, I have renewed respect for him because he never let me know. He always loved me and loved me equal. And we spent a lot of time together.
Bud struggled to make his marriage work, but his addiction to gambling kept the family on the brink of bankruptcy. In 1969, he and Miriam finally divorced. Miriam remarried in 1974. Bud Terry committed suicide around that time, and Miriam assumed her secret would be safe forever. More than a decade would pass before circumstance forced her to tell Kathleen the truth.
Well, I don't know about things like that.
I would have taken this secret to my grave. But since it's my fault, or because of me that this happened, I want to help her because I love my daughter.
Hello, is this the Norris residence?
With her mother's blessings, Kathleen Belcher has spent 6 years searching for her father, using Social Security records, classified ads, and computer hotlines.
Do you know anybody, or you have a relative with the name of Chetley Norris?
Kathleen has phoned literally hundreds of Norrises across the country, but today she is no closer to seeing her father than when she first began to look.
All I can tell you is he was very dark complected, dark hair, dark eyes. I just hope I can find him before he does pass away. It would be terrible to know that he just passed away months ago, and I missed my chance to know him. It may seem that I'm calm about the whole circumstance, but deep down I'm not. I think about it day and night. I think what it would be like to look in his face and see my face. It would be nice to see, where I got my nose, which doesn't look like anybody's, where I got my ears, just to look at somebody and see familiarity.
This is the only known photograph of Chetley Norris, taken when he was about 32 years old. Today he would be in his mid-70s. Chet said he was a Golden Gloves boxer during the 1940s. He may have had a brother named John. When we return, authorities need your help to track down a serial killer. Tonight we have a case of the utmost urgency. Someone is murdering young women in the Midwest. The authorities need your help. Please, watch closely. 26-year-old Robin Fuldauer of Indianapolis, Indiana, wanted more than anything to marry and start a family. On April 8, 1992, Robin was found shot to death at the shoe store where she worked. 23-year-old Patricia Smith and 32-year-old Patricia Majors were both happily married. They worked side by side at a bridal shop in Wichita, Kansas. Just 3 days after Robin Fuldauer was murdered, both Patricia Smith and Patricia Majors were shot to death in the back storeroom of the shop. 24-year-old Nancy Kitzmiller of St. Charles, Missouri, had just recently qualified to join a government map-making team and was awaiting assignment. 3 weeks after the Wichita murders, Nancy Kitzmiller was shot to death in the boot store where she worked as a manager. 4 murders in 3 different states, separated by more than 1,200 miles. At first glance, they seemed to be random killings. Yet each took place at a shopping mall just off Interstate 70 or a connecting highway. Indeed, there was a pattern after all. Raytown, Missouri, another link in the deadly chain. The Woodson Village Shopping Center near an access road to Interstate 70. On May 7, 1992, 37-year-old Sarah Blessing was working alone in a gift shop at the mall. At 6:30 p.m. that day, a local auctioneer noticed a stranger walking into his auction house. The stranger looked around briefly, then walked out again. Tim Hickman, who owned a video store next to the gift shop where Sarah Blessing worked, took notice as the man crossed the parking lot and passed by his store. Minutes later, Tim heard a loud pop that sounded like a gunshot. He reached his front door just as a man was disappearing around the corner. Right away, it registered with Tim Hickman that this was the stranger he had just seen. A grocery clerk collecting shopping carts also noticed the stranger. She watched as he climbed the embankment to an Interstate 70 access road and vanished. Meanwhile, Tim Hickman grabbed a portable phone and went next door to the gift shop.
I kind of looked in through the door, and I didn't see anything. And I was calling, "Ma'am, ma'am." And I stepped forward a couple of more steps, and then I sent her legs sticking out of the other room.
Sarah Blessing lay lifeless in a pool of blood. Tim Hickman immediately called the police. In no time, the Raytown tragedy was connected to the earlier shopping mall killings. A multi-state task force was formed. Ballistics tests confirmed that all 5 women had been killed with the same gun, most likely a semi-automatic .22 caliber pistol. That gun was also linked to the murder of another victim, this one a man. On April 27, 1992, 40-year-old Michael McCown of Terre Haute, Indiana, had been killed in a shopping mall ceramics store near Interstate 70. There were now 6 victims. The most promising lead came from Wichita. Police believe the killer had chosen the bridal shop there because he thought only a single female clerk was in the store.
Hi, can I help you?
Stay calm.
What do you want?
Let's just walk in the back room.
I've got money. Do you want money? Anything you want.
He was probably surprised to find 2 women on duty.
Are you the only one here? Is everybody else here?
No, nobody else here.
Where's your cash register?
It's over there. You can have whatever you
Just
want.
go in the back room. I'm just gonna tie you up, all right?
Please don't hurt us.
Calm down.
You can have the money.
Just do what he says.
That's right.
Moments later, a customer arrived to pick up a cummerbund for his tuxedo.
Hello?
He had no idea that Patricia Smith and Patricia Majors had just been shot.
Anybody here? Hey.
Hey, man, I don't know what's going on here, but I need to
Wait a minute. I want you to come in the back room with me.
Look, man, I can't
What are you
go
doing?
in the...
What are you doing?
I just
told you to come in the back room.
Hey, man, I can't come in the back room. I just want to get out of here. I didn't see nothing. I don't know nothing that's going on here. I just want to...
Shut up and get the hell out of here, then, and don't call the cops.
Inexplicably, the killer let the eyewitness go free. A short time later, he called the police. Using his description, as well as those of the Raytown eyewitnesses, the police artist came up with this composite drawing of the I-70 killer. The suspect is between 5 feet 8 inches and 6 feet tall, weighs around 170 pounds, and seems to be 35 to 40 years old. He has reddish hair and a high forehead, and what witnesses describe as lazy eyelids. According to each of the eyewitnesses, the suspect was neatly dressed and clean-cut. He appeared to be almost in a trance, as if he were thinking of something else.
It's important for the audience to know that a serial killer never stops. They may stop for a period of time, but they never stop completely, and they will always start up again. So we're trying to find this person and stop this person before we have 6 more.
Now, tragically, there are 7 victims. After we filmed this story, the murderer apparently struck again, killing a young woman in Arlington, Texas. Although the bullet this time did not come from the same gun, the MO is so similar that police are virtually sure it's the same man. Once again, the suspect is between 35 and 40 years old, 5 feet 8 to 6 feet tall, with reddish or sandy hair and thin lips. On our next Unsolved Mysteries, 30 years ago, he was America's most notorious criminal, Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler. He confessed to killing 13 women in the city between 1962 and 1964. But many doubted DeSalvo's story, and the night before he had promised to tell the whole truth, DeSalvo was stabbed to death in his prison cell.
Somebody found out. Somebody didn't want that interview happening. And I think they have said before, dead men tell no tales.
Today, some believe DeSalvo was innocent and that the real Boston Strangler got away with murder. Join me next time for this controversial investigation and more on Unsolved Mysteries.